The year is 2023. A man named Dr. Eris Thorne sits in a sterile university office. The room smells of old paper and ozone from a humming server rack. He is a hydrologist, a scientist of water. For 6 months, his team has been analyzing the aquifer under the Den Basin, a place once rich with farms, now rich with something else. On his screen is a map, a satellite image of the basin. Overlaying the image is a grid of data points. Each point is a well. Each well has a color. Most of the dots are red. A few are orange. Red means high concentrations of volatile organic compounds. Toluene, benzene, xylene, things that should not be in drinking water. Things that are the chemical fingerprints of oil and gas extraction. The orange dots are wells on the edge. Not yet critical, but trending that way. The map is a picture of a slow-motion disaster, a sickness in the ground. But Thorne's finger is tracing a shape in the middle of it all, in the very heart of the basin, surrounded by a sea of red dots. There is one single point of brilliant green. It is labeled Hayes Farm, well number 1. The green means pristine. No detectable VOCC. No salina intrusión. No heavy metals. The water is as clean as the day it fell from the sky 100 years ago. Thorne leans closer to the screen. He pulls up the historical data for that well. 1984, green. 1994, green. 2004, green. 2014, green. Today, still green. An island of purity in a poisoned sea. He types a query into a different database. Land ownership records. Den Basin. 1979. A list of parcels appears. Parcel after parcel. Owner name. Then another column. Leaseholder. Apex Energy. Apex Energy. Apex Energy. He scrolls down the list. Hundreds of names. Hundreds of farms. Every single one followed by the same 2 words. Apex Energy. Until he gets to the parcel that corresponds with the green dot. Hayes Evelyn. He looks at the leaseholder column for her name. It is empty. The cursor blinks on the blank space. Thorne stops. He takes off his glasses. He looks back at the map with the 1 green dot. Then back at the single empty space in a list of surrender. The room is completely silent. He understands that he is not looking at a data anomaly. He is looking at the ghost of a decision. A choice made 40 years ago. A choice that should have been impossible. Because in 1979, a man from Apex Energy sat at Evelyn Hayes' kitchen table. He told her she was making the biggest mistake of her life. And he said it with the kindest intentions in the world. This channel tells the stories of people who chose the hard path, the ones who stood alone against the tide. If you believe these stories need to be told, subscribe to this channel. Because the story of Evelyn Hayes is about more than just water. It's about a kind of wealth that can't be drilled or mined. And what happened next changed everything. Let me take you back to the Den Basin in the late 1970s. The land was hard. The weather was fickle. Farming was more an act of faith than a business. Generations had worked this soil. The Hayes family was one of them. Evelyn Hayes inherited the farm when she was just 26. Her parents were gone. Her grandfather, the man who taught her the land, had passed 5 years prior. She was alone on 320 acres of dirt and debt. The farmhouse leaned a little to the north. The tractor was a 1962 Massey Ferguson that drank oil. The fences were always in need of mending. Her neighbors were in the same boat. Good people, tired people. They prayed for rain. They worried about the bank. Then, one day, a different kind of prayer was answered. Apex Energy came to town. They came with new trucks and crisp shirts. They came with maps and contracts. They came with promises. A man named Jim Thompson was their landman. He wasn't a stranger from Houston or Dallas. He was a local, grew up just one town over, coached Little League, served on the church board. People trusted Jim. He sat in their living rooms. He drank their coffee. He spread his maps out on their kitchen tables. He showed them the geological surveys. He pointed to the formations deep beneath their land. The Klein Shale, a fortune trapped in rock. He offered them lease bonuses, money up front, more money than most of them had seen in their entire lives. $500 an acre. For a farmer with 500 acres, that was $250,000, just to sign a piece of paper. Then he told them about the royalties. 1/8 of everything that came out of the ground. Forever. It was a flood of hope in a dry land. One by one, they signed. The Millers, the Garcias, the Schmidts, every single family in the Din Basin. New trucks started appearing in driveways. Debts at the feed store were paid off. For the first time in a long time, people in the Basin weren't just surviving. They were dreaming. The last stop on Jim Thompson's list was the Old Hayes place. He drove up the long gravel lane on a Tuesday afternoon in May. The air was sweet with the smell of alfalfa. Evelyn was on the porch, fixing a screen door. She watched his clean Ford Bronco come to a stop. He got out, smiling. Jim Thompson had a good smile. It was genuine. "Evelyn," he said, "good to see you." She nodded, wiped her hands on her jeans. "Mr. Thompson." He sat with her at the worn pine table in her kitchen, the same table her grandfather had built. He laid out the same maps. He made the same speech. But he added something for her. "Evelyn," he said, his voice soft, "I knew your granddad. He was a good man, a smart man, but he worked himself into an early grave on this land. He wouldn't want that for you." He showed her the contract. The numbers were clear. A check for $160,000. Right now. Today. Then the royalties. He had a projection sheet. It showed $250,000 in the first 5 years alone. "You'd never have to worry again," he said. "You could fix this place up right. Or you could sell it and move anywhere you want. This is your one chance to get out from under it." He slid the paper and a pen across the table. Evelyn looked at the contract. She saw the numbers. She saw the life he was offering her. A life without worry. A life without fixing old tractors in the rain. Then she looked out the window, past the leaning barn, past the fields, to the small creek that ran along the edge of her property. A creek that never ran dry. She turned back to him. Her voice was quiet, not angry, not defiant, just clear. "I can't sign it, Mr. Thompson." Jim Thompson's smile faded. He was confused. "Evelyn, maybe you don't understand. This is guaranteed money. Farming is a gamble. This isn't." "I understand," she said, "but this land has its own way of doing things. This water has its own way. I'm not going to interfere with it." He leaned forward. His kindness was turning into something else. Concern. A deep paternal certainty. He genuinely believed she was a child making a terrible mistake. "Let me be plain," he said. "Every one of your neighbors has signed. We'll be drilling all around you. There will be trucks. There will be noise. Your farm is going to be an island. Farming here is going to get a lot harder. Are you sure you want to be the only one holding out? The only one left behind?" "Yes," she said. He sighed. A long, weary sound. He was a man trying to save someone from a burning building, and they were refusing to leave. He stood up. He put his hands on his hips. He looked around the modest kitchen. "All right, Evelyn. I'm not going to be the man who forced you. But I want you to know something. I've been doing this for 15 years, and you're making the biggest mistake of your life. I hope one day you don't regret this. I truly do." He left the contract on the table. "Just in case you change your mind," he said from the doorway. "The offer is good for 30 days. She watched his Bronco drive away, kicking up a cloud of dust. She was alone. The house was quiet. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. She looked at the piece of paper on her table. $160,000. A new life. Have you ever been told you can't do something? Not by an enemy, but by a friend. By someone who genuinely believed they were protecting you. Someone whose certainty felt heavier than any threat. That certainty is a wall. You can't fight it with anger. You can't reason with it. You can only disprove it. And disproving it takes time. Decades, sometimes. Evelyn sat at that table for a long time. The sun went down. The kitchen grew dark. She didn't turn on a light. She thought about Jim Thompson's face, the pity in his eyes. She thought about her neighbors, their new trucks, their new hope. She felt a profound sense of loneliness. The feeling of being the only person in the world who sees things a certain way. Then she remembered something her grandfather had said. He was sitting right here at this table. She was a little girl. It had been a drought year. The crops had failed. The bank was calling. She had asked him if they were going to lose the farm. He had looked at her, his eyes clear as a winter sky. He put his rough hand on hers. "Listen to me, Evie," he'd said. "They can take the crop. They can take the money. They can take the tractor. But they can't take the water. And they can't take the dirt. The rest is just weather." She stood up. She picked up the contract from the table. She walked over to the wood stove. She opened the little iron door, and she fed the promise of a new life to the fire. She watched it curl into black ash. "The dirt is enough," she whispered to the empty room. And that was the beginning, because this is where the story becomes about more than just saying no. It's about what you say yes to instead. The drilling began that summer. The basin changed. The quiet was replaced by the constant groan of machinery, the diesel-powered heartbeat of progress. Trucks rumbled down the county roads day and night. Flaring towers lit up the horizon like false suns. Evelyn's farm became exactly what Jim Thompson predicted: an island. Her neighbors, flush with cash, stopped by. They didn't mean to be cruel, but their pity was sharp. "You could still sign, Evelyn," they'd say. "It's not too late. Look what we just bought. A new John Deere combine. A new Ford F-250. A trip to Hawaii." Evelyn would just nod. "That's nice," she'd say. "I'm happy for you." They would drive away, shaking their heads. Poor Evelyn, too stubborn for her own good. She ignored them. She went to work. But she wasn't just farming anymore. She was preparing. She took the small amount of money she had. Not for new tractor, not for new truck. She spent it on books. Old books. Agricultural journals from the 1930s. Manuals on dryland farming from before the age of massive irrigation. She read about soil composition, about mycelial networks, about water retention. She learned that the health of a farm wasn't measured in bushels per acre. It was measured in inches of topsoil. It was measured in the life teeming beneath her feet. Her grandfather had always talked about the deep water, a spring-fed aquifer that was separate from the main water table everyone else used. He had marked it on an old, hand-drawn map, a place where the water was sweet and cold, even in the driest summer. Everyone else had forgotten it. They had deeper wells now, powered by electric pumps. Evelyn found the map. She found the spot. It was overgrown with willows. She spent a month clearing it by hand. She dug a small cistern, lined it with fieldstone, just like the old book said. She ran a simple 2-inch pipe from it, using gravity. No pump, no electricity. It was a trickle, not a flood, but it was hers, and it was clean. She changed her crops. Instead of thirsty corn, she planted drought-resistant sorghum and millet. She planted deep-rooted alfalfa, not to sell, but to break up the hard-pan soil and draw nutrients up from below. Her fields didn't look like her neighbors' fields. They weren't perfect, uniform rows of green. They were a chaotic mix of grasses, legumes, and cover crops. It looked messy. It looked inefficient. The men at the co-op laughed at her. "Playing farmer," they'd say. She didn't care. She was building something. She was building resilience. She was tending to the dirt and the water. And she paid for everything in cash. Small purchases, a used plow, a roll of fencing, bags of specialty seed. No debt, no bank, no asking for permission. Self-sufficiency was her only goal. While her neighbors were buying boats, she was buying time. She was digging in. Then, about 5 years after the drilling started, the first signs appeared. It was subtle at first. A neighbor, Dale Miller, mentioned his coffee tasted funny, bitter. His wife said the water had a strange smell when she did laundry. Like gasoline. They called Apex. A technician came out. He took a sample. A week later, they got a letter. It said their water was fine, within state and federal limits. The taste was probably from a natural mineral deposit. The Millers were relieved. Apex was a billion-dollar company. They knew what they were doing. But then another family, the Garcias, found a rainbow sheen on the water in their stock tank. Their cattle started losing weight. Again, Apex was called. Again, the water was tested. Again, the letter came. Perfectly safe. But the whispers started. At the feed store. At church. Something wasn't right. The money was still flowing. The royalty checks were still arriving. And it's hard to question the thing that's making you rich. So they ignored it. They bought bottled water from the store. They told themselves it was just in their heads. Through it all, Evelyn's water ran clear. Her trickle of gravity-fed spring water was a secret. Her well, the one her grandfather had dug, was still pure. She watched. She waited. She worked. And she remembered her grandfather's words. The rest is just weather. The good weather was about to end. Let me tell you about the next 30 years. Because this is where a single decision echoes across a generation. This is where the true cost is tallied. Not in dollars, but in everything else. The story of the Denton Basin unfolds in a rhythm. The rhythm of extraction. The rhythm of consequences. By 1985, the initial boom was maturing. Apex Energy, chasing profits, started using new techniques. Hydraulic fracturing on a scale never seen before. They punched thousands of new holes in the shale. The royalty checks got bigger for a while. That same year, Dale Miller's well was officially declared contaminated by a third-party tester. Unsafe for human consumption. Apex denied responsibility. They blamed his old septic tank. They gave him a one-time payment of $10,000 and a waiver to sign. He took it. That winter, Evelyn bought Dale's back 40 acres. The land nobody wanted. The land the bank wouldn't touch. She paid him a fair price. Cash. She didn't drill a well. She ran her simple pipe a little further. She planted it with native grasses to begin the slow work of healing the soil. By 1995, the basin was in decline. The easy oil was gone. Apex capped half the wells. The royalty checks slowed to a trickle, then stopped. The promised forever had lasted about 15 years. The jobs left. The new trucks were now old trucks. The dream was fading. The water was getting worse. More than a dozen wells were now confirmed as contaminated. People couldn't sell their land. Who will buy a farm with poison water? The property values had collapsed. The Garcias, who had once flown to Hawaii, declared bankruptcy. Evelyn bought their 120 acres. It bordered her property to the east. The land was tired and stripped. She paid them what it was worth before the boom. Cash. Her neighbors thought she was insane. They were trying to get out. She was doubling down. She wasn't farming for yield. Her methods were still seen as eccentric. She was farming for health, for the soil, for the water. She had started a small vegetable stand by the side of the road. People from the next county, the one without drilling, started stopping. They said her tomatoes tasted like tomatoes used to taste. They said her lettuce was crisp and sweet. They trusted her. They trusted her land. By 2005, the basin was a shadow. The flaring towers were rust-colored skeletons. The grand experiment was over. All that was left was the damage. A class action lawsuit was filed against Apex Energy. Hundreds of families joined. They wanted justice. They wanted their water back. The lawsuit would drag on for a decade. Apex, with its army of lawyers, drowned them in paperwork. The town was economically hollowed out. The young people had all left for the cities. Only the old and the stuck remained. Evelyn's farm was an anomaly, a vibrant, thriving oasis. Her little vegetable stand had become a full-fledged CSA program. 100 families paid her at the beginning of the season. They paid for a share of whatever the farm produced. It was a different kind of royalty check, one based on trust, not extraction. She hired 2 young people to help her, the children of a family that had lost their farm. She taught them about cover crops. She taught them how to read the land. She taught them about the deep water. By 2015, the lawsuit was settled. Apex Energy paid out a fraction of what was lost. After the lawyers took their cut, most families got less than $50,000. Not enough to fix the water. Not enough to restore the land. Just enough to feel cheated one last time. The money was gone. The water was gone. The hope was gone. Jim Thompson was retired by then, an old man living in the next town over. People said he had aged terribly. He carried the weight of all those kitchen table promises. Sometimes on Sunday afternoons, he would drive his car through the Denton Basin. He drove slowly past the abandoned farms, the faded for sale signs, the rusting pump jacks. He always paused at the gate to the Hayes farm. He would just sit there for a minute, looking at the green fields, the healthy livestock, the neat rows of vegetables. An island, just as he had predicted. But it wasn't an island of poverty. It was an island of life. He had been right about the what. He had just been completely wrong about the why. He never got out of the car. He just watched from a distance, a quiet witness to the harvest of choice he could never understand. The witness to the one person who had proven him wrong, not with words, but with water, and with dirt, and with time. One afternoon in the early fall of 2018, A dusty sedan pulled up to Evelyn's gate. It was a 10-year-old Buick. Jim Thompson got out. He looked much older than his 78 years. His shoulders were stooped. His confident stride was gone, replaced by a slow, careful shuffle. Evelyn was at a large outdoor sink, washing carrots for the day's CSA pickup. The water from a spigot, fed by the same gravity pipe she'd laid 40 years before, ran crystal clear. It splashed over the bright orange roots, washing away the rich, dark soil. She saw him coming up the lane, but didn't stop her work. She kept washing. He stopped about 10 feet away. He didn't say hello. He just stared at the water. The sound of it, the clarity of it. It was the sound of everything he had promised and everything he had failed to deliver. Finally, he spoke. His voice was raspy. "I came here to tell you something, Evelyn." She turned off the spigot. The sudden silence was heavy. She dried her hands on a towel. She waited. He looked her right in the eye. A flicker of the old certainty was in his gaze. "I was right. I sat at your table, and I offered you a fortune that would have changed your life. You threw it away. I wanted to come here and see the ruin you chose." Evelyn looked at him. She felt no anger, no triumph, only a deep, quiet sadness for him, for the prison of his own certainty. "No, Mr. Thompson," she said. Her voice was steady. "You didn't offer me a fortune. You offered me money. My grandfather left me the fortune. You just didn't know how to recognize it." She turned back to her carrots. The conversation, for her, was over. He stood there. The confidence in his eyes finally broke. It was replaced by a vast, empty bewilderment. He had spent his whole life trading land for money. He had never once considered that the land itself was the prize. He looked at the ground. He looked at his own hands, soft and pale. Then he looked at the water again. He took a hesitant step forward. "Could I?" he started, then stopped. "Could I have a glass of water?" Evelyn didn't answer. She simply picked up a clean mason jar from a rack, filled it from the spigot, and handed it to him. He took it with a slightly trembling hand. He held it up to the light. There was no sheen, no sediment. It was just water. He drank it. He drank it all in long, slow swallows, like a man dying of thirst. When he was done, he lowered the jar. A single tear tracked down his weathered cheek. "It tastes like I remember," he whispered. "It tastes like it's supposed to." He set the empty jar down on the edge of the sink. He turned and walked away without another word. Evelyn watched him get into his car and drive off. She had not been waiting for an apology, but in a way, she had just received one, the most honest one he could give. He hadn't said he was sorry. He had admitted she was right, not with words, but by acknowledging the purity of the one thing he had told everyone was safe to sell. Proving someone wrong who thinks they're being kind is the loneliest fight there is. But that day, standing by her sink, with the taste of his regret still in the air, Evelyn Hayes was not lonely at all. She was home. The story doesn't end there, because a legacy is not what you keep for yourself. It's what you build for others. Evelyn Hayes never had children of her own, but her farm became her child, and she planned for its future. In 2020, after Dr. Eris Thorne's study was published, the Hayes farm became famous. Scientists and agricultural students started making pilgrimages to the Denton Basin. They came to see the green that on the map. They came to study the one that got away. They analyzed her soil. They mapped her aquifer. They documented her methods. They discovered that 40 years of careful stewardship had not just preserved the land. It had improved it. The organic matter in her soil was 5 times higher than on the surrounding farms. The water retention was off the charts. Her farm was a living blueprint for recovery. Evelyn, now in her late 60s, saw an opportunity. Not for profit, for permanence. She worked with the state university. She sold a conservation easement on the entire 320 acres, a legal guarantee that the land would never be drilled, never be subdivided, never be developed. It would remain a farm forever. She used the money from that sale, a significant sum, to create an endowment, the Hayes Basin Institute. Her farm was no longer a private refuge. It became a public trust, a living laboratory and teaching center for regenerative agriculture, for water conservation in post-industrial landscapes. Its mission was simple: to teach people how to heal sick land. And the first scholarships were not for outsiders. They were reserved specifically for the descendants of the original Denton Basin families. The grandchildren of the Millers, the Garcias, the Schmidts, the children of the very people who had once pitted her. They came to her farm to learn. They were young, bright, and full of a desire to fix what their grandparents' generation had broken. Evelyn taught them. She taught them how to read the land. She taught them the difference between price and value. She showed them her grandfather's map. She let them drink from the clean, cold water. Her legacy wasn't an absence of drilling. It was the presence of knowledge. She hadn't just held out. She had built the alternative. She had planted the seeds of the basin's recovery in the minds of its own children. The truest measure of success is not what you accomplish. It is what you inspire others to do after you are gone. Evelyn Hayes had saved her farm, but in the end, she created a way for her community to save itself. Today, if you visit the main building of the Hayes Basin Institute, the old farmhouse, now restored and expanded, you will see something on the wall. It's behind a simple frame of barnwood. It's not a diploma or an award. It's an old, yellowed piece of paper, a map drawn by hand in faded ink. It shows the contours of the land, the curve of the creek, and a small, blue X marking a spot, the spot where the deep water could be found. It's a map of a place, but it's also a map of a philosophy, a guide to what matters. Beneath the frame is a small, brass plaque. It has just 5 words on it, engraved in simple, clear letters. The rest is just weather. Students and visitors stop and look at it every day. They touch the glass over the old map. They close their eyes. They try to imagine the world that made such a map necessary. They try to imagine the courage it took to follow it. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is sitting at a kitchen table. Across from them is a kind person, a reasonable person, an authority. And that kind person is offering them a deal that sounds too good to be true. They're being told to trade something permanent for something temporary, to trade the dirt for the money, to trade the water for a promise. They are being told, with the best intentions, that they are making a mistake if they say no. This story is for them. It's a reminder that true wealth is not dug from the ground, but cultivated on top of it. It's a reminder that the quietest voice in the room is sometimes the only one telling the truth. And it's a reminder that the most powerful act of rebellion can be the simple, stubborn refusal to destroy something beautiful. The courage to believe that what you already have is enough. Have you ever had to stand your ground for something you believed in, even when you were standing alone? Tell us your story in the comments. Your experience gives strength to others. And if this story reminded you of someone with that quiet strength, that stubborn grace, share it with them. Let them know they are not alone. Thank you for listening, and subscribe for more stories of the quiet victories that shape our world.